are, my friends, back with our Canadian coast to coast real estate show with our good friends, Tisha from Calgary, Roland from Vancouver. How you doing, Tisha?
Doing great, thanks. How are you doing?
I'm doing excellent. Roland, we got to all be together in one location last week at Las Vegas, the company that we all seem to be quite fond of and working for, Keller Williams Realty. They had their annual convention down in, of course, sunny Las Vegas. It was nice to be in some warm weather. How'd you enjoy the time there, Roland?
Yeah, it was awesome. It was really nice. It's been a couple of years since we've been there, and for us Canadians, it's just a great location. I think we get lots of people out, so it was nice to see all the folks from coast to coast.
Coast to coast. We had there's approximately 17,000 people at this at the convention, and I think one of the largest what am I trying to say? The biggest amount of Canadians that we've ever had there, close to, I think it was over 550 people. Tisha, I think it might have been your first time. What did you think?
It was my first time. It was amazing. I've actually never been to a convention quite like that before. There was a parade of Canadians walking through the convention center at one time singing "Oh Canada" that actually had me teary-eyed.
Yeah.
I actually saw you in that parade, Gary.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty amazing experience for sure.
It is an awesome experience, and that's one of the highlights, of course, for the week is that big parade. We do it everywhere we go. We are Canadian proud, and why do we go to conventions like that? We want to be around like-minded people and big thinkers, and to come back and share with you on video here, share with our clients, share with our colleagues, our realtors, and there's a lot of great takeaways, and there's a few things that came out of that week is, the U.S. is feeling, pushes of a recession. Canada, would we call it, are we in a recession? Well, if you'd listen to people like Benjamin Tall, he would say, yeah, you know what? We are in what we're kind of looking at, and we feel like a recession, but there's some good things happening. And of course, today we're filming this on Wednesday, March 6th, which is an important date here in Canada. That is a interest rate announcement. Roland, what happened today with our interest rate?
It helped. Big surprise.
Boom, boom, boom. Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about that just for a moment here. We're going to talk about, obviously, our local markets, my friends. We're going to talk about, what we're seeing right now today with a couple of different market segments. And one of the big things that we always kind of glaze over, because it's so, we've been hearing this since we were basically born, location, location, location. However, in certain parts of our markets, like where Tisha is in Calgary, it is a huge component. So we're going to land on that as well. But let's talk about our interest rate, and we're going to have a little friendly bet here, Roland. What is this expected? Our interest rate hold today? Is that what we were expecting?
Yeah, I think so. I think we're going to hold probably for another meeting or two, in my opinion. I predict that we'll probably get half a percent and then another quarter point by the end of the year. And so I think we'll finish the year around 4.25. So less aggressive than what a lot of people perhaps thought, or maybe what you think. I think it's just, it's offset with the fact that that inflation continues to be a real, it's almost like, I don't know if it's inflation or if it's just prices aren't going to come down. And that has been a thing in the past that I've studied, where once a high price has been set for a new service, even if things change, it rarely comes back. And so, for that reason, I feel a 2% true inflation rate is not realistic in the near term, which is going to be, fighting the fact that we can't reduce rates all that quick.
Yeah. You mentioned a good point there is, things have gotten more expensive, and just like, if things have gone up, say 50%, we feel that in our pockets, obviously. And then if they come down another, say, 25%, well, that's still up 25% from a couple of years ago. And almost that becomes like the new normal type thing. Tisha. So he threw out what he thinks, I say this guy over there, Roland. Yeah. Roland feels that we'll end the year at about 4.25, at 4.25. We're going to have a little friendly wager here. Yes. I got to be honest with you. I also wrote down 4.25. However, I'm willing to change that for this. Okay, I'm willing to
Really?
change that for the sake of the bet. So, okay, you
Me
had three
too.
realtors across Canada, uh, all landing at 4.25 for the end of the year, and
Yeah,
I'm willing to change it for the sake of the bet because I hate losing and I want to win it. I don't. But
I
we're
will too.
excellent.
So I'm gonna say 4%. Uh, I do think we're gonna fall slowly. You know, the rates tend to climb up so quick, and then when we go back down, it does tend to fall really slowly. So I think we can get there. I'm gonna say 4%. We do need to do something to increase this economy that we've got happening here.
Yeah, yeah. And I let you go first. And I shouldn't have because I was going to go at 4%.
Say 4.
So that means, and I can't choose $1, right? That's not an option here. Yeah,
No.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I got to go 4.5%, which is obviously, only two changes. Well, I shouldn't say that. It could be one change, but typically, my friends, we change things by 0.25%. To 25 basis points if you're reading it differently, but that's all the same. I agree with both of you. We're going to come down slowly. Roland mentioned that for Pratt's, we're going to see another rate hold. We don't have an announcement in April. The next one is in May, and I should bring up the date here. And by May, we are already into our spring markets here in Canada, regardless of where you are. So I don't know what you're seeing there, but I can tell you that if we're going to take a little moment here and talk about what we're seeing locally, our entry level homes, I don't want to say, I want this to come across the right way, are not flying off the shelves. However, the pricing strategy, people are pricing them and listing them at about 95% of the value to generate multiple offers, having an offer night right now, and they are getting them with 5 to 10. One property the other night that I went and looked at and we were debating on going and had 15 offers. So that's our entry level townhomes and small detached homes. Tisha, what's that market look like for you in Calgary?
Well, we've got incredibly low inventory and incredibly high demand because of in-migration. So we are still seeing a lot of multiple offers. I was looking at the townhome segment. We've got about less than 3 weeks of inventory
Mm.
there. So just incredibly high demand. You're going to see multiple offers a lot of the time here. Um, yeah, it's definitely a hot market.
Yeah, and add some clarity to that too. If I'm one of your buyer clients and I want to submit on one of those properties and offer on one of those properties, are we still able to? And I know I asked this last time, but it's important to keep asking these questions. Are we still able to add some contingencies or conditions, or we got to go infirm if we got to give ourselves a chance there?
Um, That's a good question. We are seeing a lot of unconditional
Mm.
offers these days. However, it's not, we still see conditions in those offers as well. So it's not always unconditional. We're still seeing those inspection conditions stick in there and financing. So, but people are going in strong, well above ask most of the time. And, that's different for Calgary. We're not used to offering well above asking price. I know you guys have been used to that for a long time in your market, so that's been kind of an adjustment for Calgarians. You know, we're getting used to a new normal here.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Roland, how's that market segment look for you guys there in Vancouver area?
Yeah, I don't think we're seeing as many offers as perhaps what you guys are describing. I feel like right now I'm finding a lot of properties that were on the market for a while get attention. Like I have two listings myself that, one actually between last night and this morning has gotten two offers and probably another one this afternoon, and it had no offers for the last 6 weeks. So it's a weird market, right? And why did those three people look at it in the last week and all like it, and why did the previous 12 people look at it and not move? And so as I always say, if both the buyer and the seller are unhappy, you're probably in a balanced market, and that's where I'd say we are. We're in an expensive balanced market where, um, most things will sell, and it's just if you're price sharp, you certainly get some attention. But there's even properties where I feel they should get attention. There seems to be a lack of buyers for it. The 2 bedroom market is really under pressure, and the 3 bedroom extremely in Vancouver, just because it's the squeeze product for folks that need the bedroom count but can't move into a duplex or a house. Um, and so I'd say we're about 15% busier than last year, but 20% off our 10-year average. So
Mm.
not a crazy market, but a steady market.
Yeah. I always find too, and maybe you'll both agree with this, is we remember yesterday, but we don't remember what happened 3, 4, 5 years ago, like the big picture, the 10 years
Yeah.
ago, right? And Tisha, what's one of the things that you use, or do you help educate your buyer clients on things like that? Is this, not only do we need to look at what's happening today, but like that big picture approach, is that important?
It is important, especially if you're in competition and you're going a bit higher, because we anticipate our property values gaining in the next few years. So, sometimes you want to get ahead of that curve a little bit. And so you might pay a price that's going to come into play 6 months from now, but to get your foot in the door on that property, you know, educating your clients that sometimes you want to get in sooner rather than later, and pay a little bit more
Yeah.
now because you're just chasing that new set price,
Yeah,
that
exactly. Exactly.
benchmark price.
Okay, so let's talk about, I don't want to say the only, but one of the main foundations, the one of the big fundamentals in all real estate, and I mentioned it off the top, is location, and we all heard it 1,000 times, and every HGTV show, location, 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 but I gotta tell you, it is a huge factor. And Roland, the three of us were talking offline quickly. Location for where Toronto and Vancouver are, we're going to see appreciation 9 times out of 10. Usually, as the market has some ebbs and flows, but in places like Alberta and Calgary, uh, that real estate cycle speeds up and then slows down from that location and the appreciation. I'd love for you, Tisha, to provide us some insight there, and not necessarily on some specific communities, but just things that we got to be aware of in those types of markets.
Yeah, it's been interesting to kind of see our city center hasn't appreciated quite as much as some of the properties that are kind of in the suburb communities. And so we've seen the more affordable product that wasn't necessarily as appealing to every buyer appreciate more in the last year, just because it is a single family detached home that people can get into at a lower price. Um, but down the road, as you said, in these sales cycles, those will be more challenging to sell down the road. And I think COVID has impacted that city center for not being as appealing, but I think that will probably come back up stronger here now. So definitely it's important to keep your eye out for where you want to buy, to make sure that location will help with those property increases over time, because you don't want to be stuck in one of those spots where it's difficult to sell.
I actually have a question for both of you in regards to like your city centers as an example. I was on a webinar earlier today with CBRE, and they were talking about commercial real estate and employers. Obviously, over the last few years in COVID, allowing people to work from home and remotely, and we've all experienced that.
Mhm.
They're now looking for those employees to come back to the office.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I'd love to know, Roland, and you're both shaking your head. Are we seeing that start to develop now, and people are making choices around, I need to get back into the downtown core or what have you?
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. I do think that getting back to the office space is more like, I believe the community and society thought it was going to be less relevant, and it's coming back more in norm. And I can understand. I feel I can speak for myself. I feel I work really well from home because I've always been an entrepreneur and a salesperson where like no one's held me accountable. But I can definitely speak from having staff that very few of them are more effective at home,
Hmm.
and everyone seems to think and want to sell that story, but I believe it's a false story. and people are going to have to make the decisions of of do I go with a job because it gives me more working from home flexibility, or do I go for a different opportunity and get back into a more classic cycle? We're certainly, when I speak to my barber downtown, he certainly tells me that we're lacking in downtown folks because he's half as busy as he used to be. So we're far off where we're used to trend. But I don't believe that idea that the city's not going to be relevant is the future. I believe people are going to have to make a decision on lifestyle job versus traditional scheduling is my prediction.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Tisha.
Yeah, no, I've definitely, I realize in Calgary, there's been a call in, let's get people back into the downtown core. That really is where our business is focused. So a lot of people are getting back to work. Uh, there is some negotiation though. A lot of employees will, work from home a couple days a week and then be in for meetings for those other 3 days a week. So some employers have gotten creative and, let their employees get a little bit more flexibility in their schedules. So, um, our office space, we had a lot of office space available right after COVID, as I'm sure we all did. And those are starting to fill up again now. And in our city, we've actually had a few office space buildings change over to residential space. So it's kind of an interesting change in the downtown.
Interesting, interesting. One of the things that we lack here in the Toronto area is commercial or light industrial use of a unit that's maybe 5,000 square feet or less. There's just not enough of them. Is that something similar in your locations as well? Tisha, you go first there.
Industrial is there's not a ton of vacancy in that segment. So yeah, it is pretty high demand. We still do have some spots available for sure. It's not all full. It's really the residential market that's in highest demand, but
Yeah.
definitely the commercial spaces are following suit.
Yeah, yeah, same experience there, Roland. I know that's not necessarily commercial; is not necessarily our wheelhouse, but we do help our clients from that perspective as well. But finding that 5,000 square foot unit is incredibly hard here.
Yeah, I think we're probably the most squeezed area in Canada for that because I think we gave up a lot of the industrial area for residential before pressure started to build, and we're still a huge city port. So
Yeah,
um,
yeah,
I think per capita per area, I don't think you have less light industry available than you do in Vancouver. So it's definitely a struggle and a
yeah,
balancing. Yeah.
yeah. Fair point. Fair point. Okay, let's talk about at least one of the top stories here in the Toronto area, and I know it's filtered right across Canada, so you could be anywhere in Canada. Students and immigration coming to Canada because you're on a student visa is a hot topic. Let's kind of banter about this for a few moments because there's so many moving factors as schools allow or had allowed, a number of international students come, which that ripple effect is there's no other way to say it is cheap labor as well.
Hmm.
And if you're an employer of anywhere, obviously we like cheap labor. That's just the nature of where we are in business. I want to know, this is a very broad question, Tisha, but I'll ask it like this: how has that affected the Calgary market?
Yeah. So Calgary, as you know, has exploded in population in the last year. I think we had 4.5% population gain, a huge growth for us. And that really impacted our resale market. And also our rental market has just, I think it went up to about 10% last year. So dealing with that much population growth certainly has its challenges. And I think our government kind of slowing down student visas and work permits is kind of going to slow that immigration down a little bit. How much will that slow things down will be interesting to see. I still anticipate strong immigration into Alberta in this coming year, maybe not quite as strong as it has been in the past though. So it's certainly going to be interesting to see how that plays out.
And the interesting thing too here is, and I might be speaking out of turn, so you slap my wrist if this is the case, is uh, I know in the Toronto area we would tend to receive a lot of new immigrants or new Canadians, new students. And is it true, or maybe I had this wrong? Calgary or Alberta, in a sense, would have a lot of net migration. So other Canadians moving to that province, moving to that city versus actual new Canadians coming. Is there a balance there, or help me understand that?
No, definitely. We're seeing a lot of in-migration from actually both your cities and the East Coast as well. So a ton of provincial migration coming into Calgary because we are just so affordable. I think Alberta is still 40% more affordable than both Toronto and Vancouver. So although we are complaining that it's becoming unaffordable, we're still actually a pretty good deal. And, we're paying a new buyer here is paying about $2,600 a month on rent. And I think nationally that's about $3,300 and probably higher where you guys are. So it's definitely having an impact that way.
Roland, love to get your thoughts on new Canadians and how it's affected, even we all own rental properties and everything like that. So from that perspective, but also the perspective of when you have cheaper labor and an employer sees that, one of the things that employer, the ripple effect is, how do I increase capacity so I can keep hiring this cheap labor, because that profit margin gets bigger and bigger. And that's that weird ripple effect too. But they need a place. We all need a place to live. Not they. We all need a place to live, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a big fan of government intervention or and rules, and here the challenge is the lack of clarity or the incorrect categorization. So what I see is, the student visa got out of hand because it's no longer for many people a student visa. It was a work visa, a way of getting into the country, and so I think that was a fail for both people, because the students coming here are subscribing to a university and not using it. So I don't believe in funding a university for classes that you don't take. When, if we were actually transparent, saying we need more worker visas and there's a path for those folks to get permanent residency, we could have, I think, managed it a bit better. Now I think the Canadian population is just surprised at how many student visas came in with no intention of attending class, right? And so that's a real story. But it's really just the loophole that a lot of people got access to Canada from, and I'm not a fan of that. I certainly, in Vancouver, there's quite a few schools that I don't know for a fact, but I would imagine they're veneer schools. Their people are paying a lot less for that private college than they would be a proper university, but they're still not really benefiting from an education, and so I think we're not making it a fair playing field for the universities, and not a truthful one for the people that are moving here for that. I was really surprised the more I read, though, like how few of the students actually attend class from the mass of student visas that were given out. And like anything, I mean, the pendulum of government rarely swings in the middle; it goes extremes, right? And so, if you think of immigration trending at 200,000 net for decades, and now we're over 1 million for the last few years, that's fivefold difference. And so it's, again, nothing is ever done with moderation. And so what would it look like if and that's possibly where we're going now. So I think there's probably a number around 600,000, in my opinion, that's, for good value immigration, where it's a win-win for all parties. It's not a rush. That's probably where we're trending. I think we just overdid it with the acceptance side and lost control. And so I think that's the balancing act that we're doing now.
Yeah, yeah. And with, new Canadians, new people coming to your cities, regardless of where they came from, whether it's in the country or outside the country. Uh, I love to talk just briefly as we kind of wrap this up in the next few minutes here, is the style of new housing. And I know in the Toronto area here, it's condos and then big detached homes on little tiny lots, 4-bedroom homes, and the option to add a second suite or multifamily living is still one of contention. We're still working through that. And I know in areas throughout BC, Roland, that you're already well past that. You're building homes that have 2 units and so forth. But what are you seeing there, Tisha? What are you seeing with some of the new homes and the new trends and things like that with builders?
Yeah, so it's been an interesting trend here because we're following suit with your cities. You know, we've been a primarily single family detached strong market. You know, that was taking up about 60% of our new build inventory, and that's changed now. We're really seeing a lot of condos being built and a lot less single family detached homes. So we're seeing that shift over to the condo market in terms of new home starts. It is interesting that you're talking as well about these um, income suites. That's been allowed in Calgary for a little while as well. And now the city of Calgary is actually talking about kind of blanket rezoning city lots so that you're able to build a fourplex on a good sized lot without having to go through a lot of red tape to get it done. So that's really caused a little bit of a kerfuffle here in Calgary. Not a lot of people are excited about living next to a fourplex, perhaps, right? So but Calgary needs to densify and figure out how to house its people. And so we're definitely cutting our teeth there.
We went through something very similar in the fall in the city of Toronto, and the whole NIMBY, not in my backyard, is raising concerns. But everyone loves the idea, but not in my backyard. Roland, what do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's ever changing. You know, the options available out there, and so if you're a buyer or seller, I think in any of our markets, do reach out to any of us if you have a question or if you think there's options available or not available. Right now, I'm having lots of conversations with folks who have incorrect perceived idea about interest rates and availability. And they're just assuming they have to go into the rental market, which we've been able to help a few people realize that, there are fixed rates now slightly under 5%, which for most people, they don't understand that. And there are different forms of ownership as well from, co-op or undivided interest or leasehold and more rental stock, I believe that will also become rent to own and a more subsidized housing. So all in all, I think it is going to continue to be a tough market to get a toehold, but without a toehold, you can't do anything. And so that's where, we come in to be able to help clients.
Yeah. Yeah. And you brought a good point up, and man, perhaps we should talk about this on our next video is, what the mortgage products actually look like, because I often find that people are educated. However, they're educated with perhaps the incorrect information. And a lot of that information comes from, call it the big South, down in the States, and they do their mortgages much different than we do here in Canada. So we'll definitely talk about what that looks like from our perspectives, because we all own investment properties, we all have owned real estate, and going through it from that position as opposed to just talking about it's two different things. And it's important to obviously work with people that have that experience. The coast to coast market and the Canadian real estate market is ever changing, my friends. And it's important to stay in tune, not only where you are locally, but to have that big, broad picture as well, because it's important to not only to, the stability of our economy, but just understanding what's going on. And it's always important to get connected with like-minded people right across the country. Tisha, remind us how to get a hold of you.
Google me, Tisha McKenna in Calgary, or ask Tisha at kw.com is my email.
There you have it, my friends. Roland?
Google Roland Kim, KYM's the last name, and you'll find me online.
There you have it. So I guess without saying it, you got to Google my name too, Gary McGowan. There you have it. So for Tisha, for Roland, we'll see everybody on the next episode. Goodbye for now.
Bye.